Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, a disaster on top of a disaster. RSF paramilitary fighters ramp up attacks on the flashpoint Sudanese city of al-Fashir. The Darfuri city is already reeling from war casualties and growing concerns of ethnically motivated violence. Also, uncertainties about the circumstances surrounding the deaths of several prominent activists against white minority rule in South Africa prompt the reopening of an inquest almost 6 decades later. Amongst them is Albert Luthuli, the first Nobel Peace Prize winner. And Tunisian boxer Khouloud Al-Halimi trains hard for her second Olympics, hoping to secure gold and make history as the first woman from her country to win a medal in her chosen sport. But first, a barrage of artillery and rockets has been unleashed on the Darfuri city of al-Fashir as the RSF paramilitary fighters on one side of Sudan's devastating war up the intensity of their clashes with the Sudanese army. For at least 3 days, the capital of North Darfur has been hit by the RSF's offensive as it tries to consolidate its hold on the entire region, and its civilians suffering the most. Densely populated neighbourhoods of the city are being bombarded, and residents from eastern and northern neighbourhoods, particularly around the Abu Shouk camp, are fleeing in droves. Our regional correspondent tells us more.
Fighting has been escalating in al-Fashir, the last remaining major city in Sudan's eastern region of Darfur, not under the control of the paramilitary rapid support forces who've been fighting Sudan's army. On Friday alone, 27 people were killed and 130 people were injured in clashes between both sides. Bombs also fell near a pediatric hospital in the city, killing 2 children, and hundreds of thousands of civilians were caught in the crossfire. Now, the city of al-Fashir has been besieged by the paramilitary rapid support forces for months now. This has meant that hundreds of thousands of people have been trapped inside the city without access to humanitarian aid. They're lacking water, food, electricity, and hospitals there are facing serious shortages of medical supplies. The UN has said that the fighting has created a disaster on top of a disaster. The situation in al-Fashir was already dire. Hundreds of thousands of people had fled conflict in other parts of the Darfur region and had found refuge in camps for displaced people on the outskirts of the city, but they're no longer safe in those camps now either. Bombs have fallen inside of these camps. Hundreds of people have been injured and dozens of people have been killed. But these people have nowhere else to go. The UN has warned that the situation is only going to get worse as both the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces have strengthened their bases around al-Fashir, and both sides are as determined as each other to capture the strategic city.
South Africa's unemployment rate went up for the first quarter of this year. Official data released on Tuesday logged it at 32.9% between January and March, up by 0.8 of a percentage point on the previous 3 months. Now, the drift is a worrying one for the ruling ANC party as the country heads into the last fortnight before the May 29th elections, expected to be the closest run in decades. The jobless rate is a key political issue, and the figures for young people are particularly problematic. It's at 45.5% for the first quarter of 2024, up 1.3 points. And staying with South Africa, it is going to reopen inquests into the deaths of a trio of prominent anti-apartheid activists. New information led the National Prosecuting Authority to recommend the move. And amongst the 3 is the first Nobel Peace Prize winner and former President General of the ANC, Chief Albert Luthuli. Officially, he died after being hit by a train in 1967. Today, though, the Justice Ministry says it's not so sure.
Chief Albert Luthuli's death in the 60s sparked a wave of mourning for black South Africans, while white South Africans of that period of National Party apartheid rule most likely completely ignored it, and some campaigns believe that the National Party was behind his death. Born in Zimbabwe in 1898, Chief Albert Luthuli was President General of the ANC from 1952 until his death on 21 July in 1967. A teacher, traditional leader and chief deacon at his church at Groudeville, KZN, he was a well-loved and respected member of his community who also helped to form the Natal and Zululand African Sugarcane Association. He was awarded the 1960 Nobel Peace Prize for his personal policy of non-violence. A husband and father of 7, Luthuli was reported to have been killed in a train collision, but an inquest into his death in September of 1967 reportedly failed to consider a scientific report which stated it was highly unlikely that the injuries that resulted in his death were caused by a train collision. Using this information, together with an investigation conducted by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and a recommendation from the National Prosecuting Authority, Justice Minister Ronald Lamola has reopened the inquest. Many South African apartheid heroes and activists died under questionable circumstances, and inquests are an attempt to find the truth. Investigations are also reopening into the deaths of 2 anti-apartheid activists, lawyer Griffson Klenge, who died in mysterious circumstances in 1981, and civic leader Boy Mainki, killed during an altercation with SAPS in 1985.
And Wenzel there with that breakdown for us from Cape Town. Now, we're going to be looking at a Anglophone separatist attack in Cameroon. At least 5 members of the security forces were killed by them in an attack over the weekend. English-speaking separatists began an armed rebellion in 2017, and the conflict, in which both sides have been accused of atrocities, has already cost over 6,000 lives. Our correspondent reports.
A recent attack on security and defense forces in the English-speaking regions of Cameroon has resulted in the death of at least 5 gendarmerie officers. This attack, which took place along the Manfei-Ekok axis in the Manu division of the conflict-hit southwest region of Cameroon, resulted in the death of the commander of the Eyumojok Gendarmerie Brigade. The men who were on a patrol were assassinated or were shot and killed by suspected gunmen. Their bodies were later burnt. Meanwhile, their vehicle was found along the road, perforated with bullets. This attack comes barely days after Capo Daniel, the former spokesperson of the Ambazonian Defense Forces, which is one of the radical wings of the English-speaking separatist fighters, signed a declaration calling for an end to attacks on government militia, which, according to him, will pave a way for direct negotiations with the government to bring an end to the 7-year-long Anglophone crisis. His declaration was rejected by the Minister of Territorial Administration and Decentralization. Meantime, the government of Cameroon is still to react to the killing of the 5 gendarmerie officers in the southwest region of Cameroon.
Indira Eteng there for us. Now, since the military coup in Niger last July, relations between Niger and Benin have been tense. Today, there's even talk of an open crisis, Niger accusing its southern neighbour of harbouring a French military base, which Benin formally denies. In response, President Patrice Talon has stopped the export of Nigerian oil from its shores. Sophie Lamont has more.
After expelling French troops from the country last year, Niamey now says it's concerned about their alleged presence in neighbouring Benin. A recurring accusation that the French armed forces already addressed during a visit to Benin last December.
No, there is no permanent French military mission in Benin. You all live in Benin. If there was a French military base, you'd see it.
Since 2022, the Beninese government has stepped up its military presence in border areas in a bid to contain the threat of terrorism on Benin's doorstep and throughout the country.
As part of our strategy, we have planned and implemented the construction of a number of small military camps, which is perhaps what the Nigerian authorities are talking about. Perhaps they are of such high quality that Niger thinks African countries are not capable of building such high-standard infrastructure.
In response, Patrice Talon, president of Benin, has halted the export of Nigerian crude oil from the Gulf of Guinea. Niger is a landlocked country and therefore charters its petrol through a 2,000-kilometre pipeline inaugurated in January before exporting it internationally. Niger is now calling on China, the project's largest shareholder, to mediate the crisis.
Niger has always honoured its commitments and will continue to do so. That's why we told the Chinese side to take over and talk. And I think a solution will be found.
The project as a whole could now be threatened. It was expected to generate 300 billion CFA francs for Benin over 20 years and create 3,000 jobs between the two countries.
Now we hear from Tunisian boxer Khouloud Al-Halimi, who's training hard for her second Olympics, hoping to secure gold and make history as the first woman from her country to win a medal in her sport. Clem Vala has more.
With an iron fist and unbreakable determination, Tunisian boxer Khouloud Al-Halimi is not pulling any punches as she prepares for Paris 2024. Dancing across the ring, she is not afraid to trade blows with her opponent. The 34-year-old has one goal: become the first Tunisian woman to win an Olympic medal in boxing.
The Olympic Games represent a culmination of my career, encompassing all my training and efforts. Being nominated for the Olympics means standing out, if you are an Olympic athlete or not, and the most important thing is representing your country.
Over her 18-year career, Al-Halimi has secured several titles in the flyweight and super flyweight categories, including the 2024 Nelson Mandela Africa Cup, the 2023 African Championship, and the 2019 African Games. Now, with Al-Halimi's second Olympic qualification secured, Tunisia's hopes for Olympic glory in boxing rest on her shoulders.
You know that boxing in Tunisia hasn't had a medal since 1996, an Olympic medal. I hope that it'll be by my hand, God willing, just to make Tunisia, all Tunisian people and all Arabs happy.
Women's boxing in Tunisia does not receive much attention from authorities or support from fans and clubs. However, despite facing criticisms and doubts about her stature in the sport, Al-Halimi has the National Federation in her corner.
Khouloud's nomination is a historic achievement. She is truly the pride of Tunisian boxing, and women's boxing especially.
Al-Halimi hopes that Paris 2024 will see her name engraved in gold, affirming her excellence in a sport traditionally dominated by men.
Looking good. Well, that, though, is all we have time for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, though. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.